morning. It is Tuesday, Beis Shvat, Tovshin Ayin Vov. We are in the Mamar Vayihiyu Chayei Sara of Tovshin Yud Gimel. And we are on page Mem Aleph. We'll start again from Ubir Inyan on page Mem. Maybe not, maybe we'll carry on. Well, let's see where we go. Okay. Another, just to elaborate on the central point that we learned yesterday, and that is that the Rebbe was explaining the idea of the term, the Kabbalistic term, Oireis merubim kelim mu'atim, which is the prevailing situation, condition in Toihu, as opposed to kelim merubim in Tikkun. Oireis mu'atim and kelim merubim in Tikkun. And the Rebbe explained that when we speak about the abundance of the lights of Toihu, we are talking about a qualitative abundance, and when we talk about the abundance of the kelim, the vessels of Tikkun, we're talking about a quantitative abundance. I just want to refocus on that for a minute and perhaps elaborate a little bit. There's a difference. The Rebbe made this point. The Rebbe said that the qualitative abundance of the lights of Toyu are as a result of, as he uses the language on page Mem Aleph, mitzad hablikvul de'erin sof, as a result of, because of the limitlessness of God's infinite light. And he said that the abundance, the quantitative abundance of the vessels of Tikkun are as a result, are because of the hischalkus, the fragmentation. Those were the points that have been made. What is, I want to flesh this out a little bit more. When we speak of Oiris, of divine lights, energies, the Oir of the Sphira, the Oir aspect, the light aspect of the Sphira, as opposed to the Keli aspect of the Sphira, there is a discussion whether, now we know, let me back up a second. Oir, certainly from Tikkun and down, reveals itself in a manner of ischalkus, of fragmentation. Different aspects, aside from the fact that each Sphira on its own, this is chesed and this is gvura, it has its own particular character, each Sphira itself also has abundant strands to it, many strands to it, which is the idea of ischalkus, fragmentation. Where does that fragmentation begin? What causes that fragmentation? The spheres come by ischalkus, right? Where does that ischalkus, where does that fragmentation begin? Does it begin in the Ur, or does it begin in the Keli? Does it begin in the divine energy, the light, or in the vessel? What causes that fragmentation? It's a long discussion in Chassidus, the crux of which is that the Oir, the light, relative to the Kli, is poshut, is pure, is non-fragmented. But the fact that the Keli, the vessel, is able to affect the Oir, the light, to be fragmented, that means that the Oir already lends itself to be fragmented. It's a type of Oir, a divine energy, which allows itself to be fragmented through the effect of the Keli.
So is the Keli causing the fragmentation, or it's like extracting only part of the light, of the effulgence of light? That Keli is only able to accept part of it, and that's causing the fragmentation. The Keli itself.
Let's put it this way. Let's go back to Ur for a second. In Ur, you have two types of Ur. You have what's known as an Ur Atzmi, an essential light, and then you have a Ha'ora, something which is just a ray, a manifestation, an emanation. Generally speaking, this is the difference between Ur HaSovev and Ur HaMamali, the transcendent divine energy, and the immanent divine energy. The exterior divine energy and the interior divine energy. this is also the difference between Tohu and Tikkun, the Eiris of Tohu and the Eiris of Tikkun. And that's the point that Rebbe is making here. In other words, there are divine energies that are inherently non-fragmentable. Eiris Seviv is not fragmentable. Eir HaTohu is non-fragmentable. These are what's known as Eiris Atzmiyim. Another way of saying it. Eiris Makifim. Transcendent. What does that mean? They're not fragmentable. They're not capable of expressing themselves interiorly in another realm, in another visage, in another entity. They are Eir, essentially so. They're not fragmentable. Eir HaMemale, Eir Pnimi, the Eiris of Tikkun, the lights of Tikkun, are fragmentable. And therefore, once they enter into the Keli is able to channel that fragmentation and reveal that fragmentation. So where does the fragmentation begin? Where does it stem from? It stems from the Eir. The one that brings it out, as it were, the one that makes it pronounced, is the Keli. So this is the point that Rebbe makes over here. He says the Eiris Merubim of Tohu, the abundant lights of Tohu, is as a result of the Bligvul, the infinity, the infiniteness of the Eiris of God's infinite light. Meaning to say, because the Eiris of Tohu, the divine energies of Tohu, are inherently Eir HaBligvul, they are of the Eir Sof, as it were. Therefore, they are inherently non-fragmentable. They are inherently, they don't lend themselves to be clothed interiorly in a keli.
Then you're saying there are two types of ore.
Correct.
In Or Atzmi, there are two types of ore.
Why am I saying that?
Because you're saying that you have from the level of Tohu, which can't be fragmented, and then there is a part of light that can be affected by the Keli.
That's the Eir Pnimi. That's the Ha'ara. That's Eir, which is already in a form of Ha'ara. That's the point that I was making. It's an inherently different type of Eir. The point that Rebbe made in the previous Mamar, where he said, when we say Eiris Merubim, abundant lights,
part of the original or is like or a different type of
there are two strands revealing two aspects of the Ein Sof, as it were. So in the Etzem Ha'er, when the Eir first comes into being before the Tzimtzum, it's all combined. But as we proceed down and say the Shtalshalos, these things are pronounced in a more separate way, kind of thing. They become more identifiable. That's the whole process. It all goes back to the Etzem.
Yeah. I remember learning, which is a fantastic thing, that the whole decision, where you get the two strands from, is God's indecision or decision either to create or not to create. And that is what creates the two strands. So the decision to create is what will allow the Mamale.
Correct.
So maybe the one that's looking to say, well, what am I creating for?
Correct. And even in the Chayei Sara, we learned this in a Maimer, in one of the previous Mamar, I think in Elam Mishpatim, because it's in Yud Aleph, where he speaks about the divine energy has to be Rotzav V'Shoiv. It flows and ebbs. Why? It's this feeling, yes, I have to come down to create, but what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I need to go back to the Ein Sof. You come back to the Ein Sof and say, what are you doing here? The whole purpose I made you, is in order for you to go down and to animate and to give life. So yeah, this is the constant process of creation, if you will. So the point being, but I want to get to the point that I was trying to make over here is that when he said, when you say Eiris Merubim, abundant lights of Tohu, it's a qualitative abundance, meaning to say it's an inherently different Eir. The Merubim aspect, the abundance, emanates from the fact that it cannot be fragmented. It doesn't lend itself to fragmentation. It is because of the bligvul, the limitlessness that is within that type of Eir. That's why it's Tohu. Whereas when we talk about the Kelim Merubim of Tikkun, when you have abundant Kelim, what does it mean? The phrase that Rebbe uses is Mitzata Ischalkus, because of the fragmentation. Meaning to say, being that it's a type of Eir that lends itself to be fragmented, it needs comparable vessel aspects to, as it were, draw those various strata within the Eir to be revealed. So the more interior, as it were, the Eir is, the divine energy is, the more, in other words, the more potential, if you will, let's call it potential, is Chalkos. potential fragmentation there is, the more vessels you need, the more aspects of vessels you need. So it's a quantitative one. That's the point that Rebbe makes. And that's where we're up to. We'll start actually from Aleph, where we left off. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the top. The line starts with the acronym, the Ein Sof, and we're at the full stop. Now, the point that Rebbe was asking, the question that Rebbe was asking was, the Rebbe made a point, he said, that through the fact that we occupy ourselves with Avodas HaBirurim, with the service of Hashem known as the process of refinement, interacting with Gashmias, with physicality, and extracting the Nitzutzi Kedusha, the holy sparks that are embedded within them, which are rooted in Toyu, right? Rooted in the world of Toyu and the world of chaos. From these elements, from these Eidos that we just discussed, the Eidos and the Kelim that we just discussed in Toyu, we don't only redeem these holy sparks of energy, these fragments of energy, of divine energy, but we also add something new and innovative into the side of Kedusha. How so? This is why, through refining physical things, this causes an addition into the side of Kedusha, into holiness. Why? Since what happens through the refinement? The person interacting with Gashmis and refining the divine energy that's within it. He draws down, he taps into the divine lights of Toyu. Shem Eiris Mirubim, which as we just explained, Eiris Mirubim Be'echos, they are qualitatively abundant. They are of a different nature. It's a different type of Eir. So therefore, once you refine it and lift it, you have now caused that to become part of the Tikkun reality. So you've drawn into Tikkun an energy which it doesn't possess on its own in the natural order of things. So not only are you redeeming the nitzutz, the fragment that was embedded within the Gashmias, through that you're also adding into Kedusha. This will shed more light, new light, on the saying of the sages that the Rebbe mentioned before, that Yidden were exiled for the purpose of adding, so that there could be more converts added to the Jewish nation. And as the Rebbe said, we can't understand this only in the simple sense, because if that's the case, then the ratio between additional converts and the amount of Yidden that are in exile is completely imbalanced. So what does it mean? The Rebbe said, the koi al hatesefes shall yidei advarim hagashmim v'halo asan nitzutzos. In fact, it's a reference to what? To the addition that takes place, that comes about through the process of birurim, through the refining of physical things, and lifting the sparks of kedusha, of holiness that are within them. The bishvil zeh kedai, for which it is worthwhile, sheti yeridas haneshama lamata, that there should be the descent of the soul, haneshamas lamata, the descent of the souls down here below into this world, v'sheyiyu b'golus bein ha'umayis, and that we should be exiled among the nations. Why? Mishum shal yidei zeh yesh teisefes sheiteis fu beira kedusha, because through this process there is an addition into the light of kedusha, into the light of holiness, as the Rebbe just explained. V'hainu, and the Rebbe repeats it again and fleshes it out even more. Shaleizu bilvad shel de birur advarim hagashmim ba'avedus kol yom v'yom. Not only through the refinement of in other words, the Rebbe says like this: through the refinement of physical matters, through man serving Hashem each and every day, not only mahapchim es advarim hagashmim l'kedusha, not only do we transform physical matter to holiness. How? And the Rebbe quotes over here from the Zohar in the brackets, Kol Yom V'Yom Oved Aviditei, each and every day having its particular specific service of Hashem. And how do we transform these physical matters to Kedusha each and every day? Al Yidei HaBrocha Lifnei V'Achrei Achila, through reciting a blessing before and after we eat. Val Yidei HaAchila L'Shem Shamayim, and through eating for the sake of heaven, meaning to say that we should have the strength and energy to fulfill the mission for which our soul came into this world. And also through the occupation of a person in all his needs for the sake of heaven. Right? Through the person. What does it mean, a person occupying himself with his needs for the purpose of heaven, for the sake of heaven? Through serving Hashem with the energy that he receives from that food, and also through the physical comforts and needs that are fulfilled through this interaction, and the person utilizes it to serve Hashem. So through this, we refine. One refines and lifts the sparks, the fragments of divine energy that are embedded deeply within these physical matters. So that's one thing that is accomplished. On top of that, through the refinement of these sparks, which is mentioned before, that I've explained quite at length, stem from where? From the world of Tohu, which is normally beyond the reality of Tikkun. There comes about an additional infusion into the strength of holiness, into the power of holiness. From the abundant lights of Tohu, qualitatively abundant lights of Tohu. Why? Where do the souls stem from? Where are souls from where are souls born? We learned quite at length in previous Mamarim that it's from the union of the spheres, of the divine spheres of where? Of Tikkun, of Atzilus, right? Whether it's a Zera Adam, Zera Behema, but it's through the unions of what? Of the spheres, the divine attributes of Atzilus, which is Tikkun. So the souls themselves are rooted where? In the world of Tikkun. Through the divine sparks of energy which are refined from the physical matter, from interaction with physical matters, physical things, we draw down where? Into the reality of Tikkun. We draw down into it an additional infusion of divine energy, divine light, from the abundant, qualitatively abundant lights of Tohu. Clear?
Yes, very much.
Chapter 3, Gimel. Now the Rebbe said, where does all this come from? Where do we get the strength for all of this? We get the strength for all of this from Avraham, from our forefathers. He began to say, Maisa Avos Simon Lebanim. If you remember, the Rebbe explained the difference between Sarah and all the other women that are mentioned in the Torah. That Sarah had the unique characteristic of descending and ascending, meaning to say coming into this world wholesome, or with her neshama intact, and leaving this world when she passed away also completely intact, and actually bringing tikkun, bringing repair into this world, into the various experiences and the various places she went. Unlike the other women in the Torah, for example, Chava, as he mentioned, and he also mentioned Noach, the Zohar mentions that there was a problem. Chava got attached to the snake got attached to her. Noach drank and became drunk. These were their attempts to interact with Gashmias, or with Klippa as it were, and trying to lift it and refine it, and unfortunately something went wrong. Sarah, on the other hand, interacted, and not only didn't become influenced by it, but influenced her environment and repaired it. So that's why Nachsas V'Salkas, she descended and ascended, and that's why the Torah enumerates all her years and so on, as the Rebbe brought from the Zohar, right? So the Rebbe said, that was, obviously when we talk about Sarah, we're talking about Sarah and Avraham. And he quoted the pasuk that they descended into Egypt, and then Avraham ascended from Egypt, he and his wife and his cattle and his silver and his gold, meaning to say, everything attached to Avraham was lifted out of Egypt, lifted out of the depths of Gashmias, and brought up to the domain of Kedusha. And that gave the ability, that infused Maisa of a similar bonding, the experiences of our forefathers, of our predecessors, is an infusion and empowerment for their offspring. And therefore that gave the strength and the power and the ability for the Yidden who descended into exile of Egypt to prevail and to take the netzutzos, to extract from there also the divine sparks of energy that were embedded within that particular exile. Says the Rebbe that this extends not only to, that empowerment extends also to, not only to redeem the sparks of energy, but also to the additional infusion of oil, of light and energy into Kedusha. What did the Rebbe explain up until now, in the last section? The Rebbe explained that through the process of Birur, we not only redeem the sparks themselves, but we add into Kedusha as well, right? So the Rebbe says for the second aspect, That's also as a result of what? Maisa of a similar banim that comes through the empowerment of our predecessors. V'hinei k'shem shebirer advarim agashmim shebizman hagolus hu hadinas sinas koyach mimaisa avos d'Avraham, just like the refinement of physical things, which takes place during the period that we are in exile, comes through an empowerment from the experiences of our predecessors. Of Avraham, Cain, who being into Sefer Eshel de Abirur, so too it is also concerning the additional light, which is added into the side of Kedusha, into holiness, which comes about through this refinement. Shegam in Yezem Atzina b'Avraham Avinu. With that too we also find by Avraham Avinu. Shezehu Masha Kosov b'Avraham. This is the meaning of that which is written concerning Avraham. V'hoya shimcha Avraham ki av hamein goyim nisaticha. When Hashem changes Avraham's name from Avram without a hey to Avraham with a hey, what does he say? Your name will now be Avraham because I have appointed you, I have empowered you to be the father of the multitude of nations. The Mekiv Shenasa Av Habayin Goyim, because since Avraham at that point became the father of the multitude of nations, which means Av Legadim. What does it mean, a father to the multitude of nations? He became also the father to converts. What does that mean? Where do we see that? When a convert is called up to the Torah, what do we call him up as? So-and-so ben Avraham. Because Avraham is now the father of the converts. Which, as mentioned before, what's the idea of conversion converts? That's the idea of refining divine sparks of holiness that are embedded deeply within the ger, or within gashmias, within physicality. So therefore, since Avraham now has become the father also for converts, meaning to say the father of Avodas Abirudim, that's why Hashem added now to Avraham this letter hey. Why? Why was it necessary to change his name? It wasn't just an accolade. Hashem actually empowered Avraham now to be able to draw and to extract those additional lights from the qualitatively abundant lights of Torah, which in the normal course of things is not possible. This meaning, before this, before he became the father of the multitude of nations, his name was Avram without a hey, which is still a very, very high level. Shehi madrega na'adas b'kedusha. It is indeed a very high level in holiness. Okay, mevuir b'kama mekaymes, as it is explained in a number of places in Chassidus. The Avram Pirushe, what is the meaning of Avram without a hey? It's actually a combination of two words. Avram, the meaning is exalted father. What does that mean? Seichel anela mikol rayin. It's a reference to intellect which is concealed from all concept. Meaning to say, without going into much detail now, we're talking about an extremely high level of kedusha. Hainu madrege b'kedusha shi b'havdola legamri b'seder shlashlos. We're talking about a level of holiness which is completely removed from the chain order of creation. So even, in other words, even Avram in his condition, the spiritual condition level of Avraham, the level of Avraham, before he was named Avraham with a hey, was also a very high level of kedusha, completely beyond, removed from the Seder Shtalshalus. Or Mikol Makim, nevertheless, Bishvil Sheyi Avram and Goyim, in order to become the father of the multitude of nations, Nimshach Beit Yisefes Eis Hey, it was drawn down into him. Hashem infused him with an additional letter. Which letter? Hey. Why? Mishum Shalidei Habir the Hamain Goyim. Because through the refinement of the multitude of nations, he should be able to draw down this additional light from the abundant, qualitatively abundant lights of Toyu, which otherwise he would not be able to do. Why specifically the letter Hey? What's so special about the letter Hey? And that the Rebbe is going to explain in the next section of this on page Membeis, which we will leave for the forthcoming Shiur.